In April of 1474, Vannonia claimed the title of Defender of the Faith, earning great favor from the Pope. Emperor Demon, in the absence of a sane mother to raise him, sought that solace in the arms of the Holy Mother Church, leading him to be a wildly devout monarch. His second decree being a total renovation of the Church of St. Guthlac, seeking to make it the largest and most glorious church in the whole of the empire, which would take over 25 years to complete. In 1476, while out hunting, Emperor Demon discovered an infant among the reeds near a river. Seeing this as divine prophecy, he adopted the boy as his own son and named him Alistair. The High Lords of Vannin, meanwhile, continued to seethe, ruled first by a hysterical woman and then by a pompous zealot. They thought that he would sooner tithe the taxes of the empire to the church before using that money for the good of his own people. They did, however, see an opportunity in that orphaned forest boy he found out hunting. An illegitimate heir, not of the royal blood, it would be easier to unseat him when he ascended the throne. At the moment, though, they bided their time. On the 4th of September 1478, the world changed forever. The Triumph, after returning to the shores of Iceland twice due to inclement weather, discovered Nova Scotia on its third departure. Captain Berenguer decided not to land there, however, as in the early autumn it seemed barren to him, and the shore hostile to the hull of the Triumph. Thus, he elected to sail south, and in 1480 the Triumph discovered St. Lucia. Here, Captain Guido Berenguer and a small group of fellow sailors made first contact with the natives. The aging explorer wrote in his journal, "Short, affable men and plain, plump women greeted us on their sandy beach. Fancying us gods or ancestors of some sort, they showered myself and my men with food and pearls. We settled there for the night, as the natives had no metal weapons and posed little threat to us. This place could be of great value to the empire." Captain Guido Berenguer had discovered the New World. In 1481, while this news and the indomitable ship that carried it was making its way back to Europe, Vannonia was called upon by the Burgos Federation to help in its war against Isbilia, who called upon their ally France against Vannonia in turn. Vannonia answered the call, and thus Western Europe was made a battleground. 60,000 men descended on Paris and began a brutal siege on the orders of Emperor Demon, and 200 days later the proud French capital was sacked yet again. Meanwhile, Demon commanded that the New World be settled as soon as possible, so that the savages there could be granted salvation by way of the one true faith. The first Vannonian colonialist soon landed on Cape Verde with his family, a man named Samson Mahout. In July of 1482, a white peace was agreed upon, as this news of a new world threw Europe into a fit, and the crowned heads poured their vast fortunes into colonization efforts, in various bids to make such fortunes even more boundless. Over the next 5 years, a great many things occurred, and there was no way to find peace from them. First, a war with Occitania broke out over their supposed right to succeed the throne of Vannonia against the adopted prince. Vast Atlantic exploration took place, and while the colony of Cape Verde became more stable, another group of Vannonian settlers set out to colonize the New World in the form of Rio Grande. Some to escape the war, others for different reasons. In 1488, the Pope called the 14th Crusade, this time campaigning against Mali, which had spread Islam and resisted European expansion further into Africa. In 1489, the natives of the Americas proved themselves to be of a variety of temperaments, as the natives of the mainland attacked and killed the colonists attempting to settle the Rio Grande, the settlement essentially vanishing overnight. In 1492, the explorer Alistair Marth returned to Rio Grande with an army to protect a new clutch of colonists from the savage natives there. In 1493, the papacy reaffirmed its authority in all matters temporal and spiritual. Pope Sylvester issuing a papal bull commanding the nations of the world to understand the role of the Church in the light of the Age of Exploration. Included in the Pope's demands were an international tax on colonial wealth that would go to the Vicar of Rome, but also a seat at the table in matters regarding colonial disputes, as well as veto power over colonial expeditions. Shortly after affirming his dedication to the Pope in 1495, Emperor Demon Monad changed the imperial policy towards natives, outlining that those who refused communion were to be killed. In October of that year, Emperor Alistair XI Monad rose to power, having been adopted before his brothers and sisters were born. Because of his disputed status, a pretender unrelated to the plotting of the High Lords rose up in northern Vannonia with 7,000 men, but the revolt was put down thereafter. Meanwhile, in the Rio Grande colony, 2,000 natives were preemptively put down for their threatening of Vannin territory, and their lands annexed. There were no survivors among them. In 1505, Emperor Giovanni Rastello of Lombardia approached Pope Sylvester for approval and subsequent loan in order for the empire to join the colonial endeavor. Pope Sylvester denied him, and even demanded he pay penance in the form of several thousand ducats to the church for his presumption, thinking that he was worthy of a loan from the mouthpiece of God. The quote that burned him so much was this: "You are not to treat the altar of the Lord as a bank, no more than you are to treat a man like a fly. Go on now, buzz away, sinner." As soon as he returned to his capital, Emperor Giovanni of Lombardia declared war upon the Papal State. The Lombardian armies were simply overwhelming, and Rome was conquered before the year was out. Pope Sylvester moved the seat of the papacy to Bordeaux in Occitania, and it was from that seat that he excommunicated Emperor Giovanni Rastello. He also softened his demands, and the Catholic world was amiable to the revised conditions he had in regards to colonial ventures. Around this time, the High Lords found their plans interrupted by the frenzy the New World had caused, and an overthrow of Alistair XI was simply not in the cards. However, it was possible for them to furnish the overthrow long before it even took shape, by exploiting the new frontier that stretched out before them. If they managed to make significant enough investments in the New World, they could become wealthy beyond imagining, and may even be granted lordships over different colonies by a particularly absent or unremarkable monarch, like Alistair XI precisely was. Indeed, the crown granted them collective lordship of the sprawling, undeveloped land, with the agreement that the crown would directly administer whatever major cities formed in the coming decades. Alistair XI thought himself wise in this regard, but he was a fool to overlook the profitability of luxury crops like cotton and tobacco in favor of the ports of cities that did not yet exist. In order to fuel this engine of profit, the High Lords purchased slaves from Mali, which was all too happy to trade their unfortunate cousins who lacked the mildly civilizing influence of Islam to help them. In December of that year, the High Lords founded the Grand Atlantic Charter, a maritime company through which the four would share profits and make collective investments to increase their own wealth and power. Alistair XI was a fool in that regard, to allow such a thing to happen. He did, after all, lack the royal blood in the first place, so perhaps that made him somewhat dull as a head of state. Whatever the case, his nonchalant naivete put the ancient monarchy he had been entrusted with in a state of mortal danger, whether he realized it or not.